Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carol Fleck, and on behalf of the Attitude team, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD experts presentation titled Interrupt the Cycle of Self-Sabotage in the New Year. Leading today's presentation is Dr. Tamara Rosier. Dr. Rosier is the founder of the ADHD Center of West Michigan, a board-certified coach, and the president of the ADHD Coaches Organization. She also has been a college administrator, a professor, a high school teacher, and a faculty developer. In her coaching practice, Dr. Rosier helps clients understand their thinking processes to build confidence and improve their communication skills and relationships. In today's webinar, we'll talk about the behaviors and emotions that prevent us from making progress. Procrastination, perfectionism, people-pleasing, risk-taking. These behaviors are all too familiar to people with ADHD. But as 2024 gets underway, this is a great time to reset. With the help of our expert, we'll learn how to break the cycle of self-sabotage. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine. The spring issue is just out, and you could read about the ADHD treatments that 11,000 Attitude readers say work best for them. And top experts explain how emotional dysregulation is a core symptom of ADHD and what you can do about it. So subscribe to Attitude Magazine today for yourself or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. Click the magazine tab on screen to learn more. Finally, the sponsor of this webinar is Inflow. Inflow is the #1 app to help you manage your ADHD. Developed by leading clinicians, Inflow is a science-based self-help program based on the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy. Join Inflow today to better understand and manage your ADHD. Click the link on screen to learn more. Attitude thanks our sponsors for supporting our webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. So without further ado, I'm so pleased to welcome Dr. Tamara Rosier. Thank you so much for joining us today and for leading this discussion.
Thanks, Carol. It is great to be here. And, before we get started, many of you are professionals listening, and that's great. I'm glad to have you. But this is really going to be a better experience if you just think about yourself for a while. And if you're one of the very few annoying people that says, self-sabotage, I don't even think I do it. I'm just okay the way I am. Maybe pretend just for a few minutes that you self-sabotage, because your clients, I can almost guarantee your clients with ADHD need you to understand this. And if you're listening with ADHD, well, my friend, I can almost guarantee you that you have some tributes and you have some kind of characteristics of self-sabotage. So let's dive in and let's figure out what they are. So always, I tend to start out with a little bit of a confession. And then I get mad at myself for being so vulnerable later, which is a different kind of self-sabotage we'll talk about later. I was my own worst enemy. And you know what? Sometimes I continue to be my own worst enemy. Every day I work with clients who are their own worst enemy. So today I'm going to use 3 examples. One, this woman who walks into my office and not walks in just randomly. She's a client of mine. She belongs there. She's meeting with me and she's really distraught. And she's distraught because she has an interview in 4 hours, but she has a bad attitude about interviewing and she's starting to self-sabotage. So we're going to talk about her story and kind of dissect that story. We're going to talk about one of my clients who texted me just this morning, who was so bummed because he and his wife, who is expecting, they ordered pizza and she loves pizza. And he's like, that's okay, honey, I'll clean up. He put his the pizza all in one big pizza box to put in the refrigerator. And then his ADHD kind of kicked in, and he put the empty box in the refrigerator and threw out the other. So now his pregnant wife wakes up for pizza and doesn't have pizza. So what started with him, now he's having a self-sabotaging day because he really wanted to do it right. So we're going to talk about him. Lastly, I am going to talk about myself because I continue to be my own worst enemy sometimes. This past summer, I was working on my second manuscript. So my first book, Your Brain's Not Broken, did well. And so the publishers came back and said, what else do you have for us? I'm like, I would love to write this book on ADHD and families. Awesome. They gave me a year to do that. And of course, I wait till the last 4 months before I really dig in on the project. During that time, I was confronted with my self-sabotaging ghosts that I thought I got out of my house, but nope, they came back and I was my own worst enemy. So I'm going to talk about those 3 examples today. So I want you to, I slipped. I want you to think about, first of all, what are the behaviors or thoughts that prevent you from reaching your goals, having peace, or achieving success? And so I want you to think about, in what ways are you your own worst enemy? Now, some of you are like, okay, hold my beer. I got a ton of them. For those of you who have just a ton, just for today's exercise, just land on one, okay? Many of my clients, they're their own worst enemy in the morning. Okay, they set their alarm, they do all the planning that we work on, and then they hit snooze for what seems to be 6 hours, okay? And then they sabotage their entire day, right? So they usually do that because they've stayed up too late, things like that. So I want you to write down, or if you're listening on the podcast, just hold in your head, this is how I am my own worst enemy. Okay, you got that? All right. So specifically, let's talk about what you do. Do you procrastinate? Do you overcommit? Do you sabotage relationships? Do you speak negatively to yourself? Do you make pessimistic predictions? Like my client who was going to interview after this session. Do you make excuses and blame outside circumstances? Do you abuse substances? So think through. Now, you just said, hey, Tamara, you did something unfair. You said land on one, but you just gave me a ton more ideas. I did, because I want you to start to narrow, this is specifically how I think I self-sabotage. Okay. Next, I want you to ask why. Now, if you are like my sassy clients, you will say, well, how would I know? That's why I'm here talking with you. Okay, that's true. But I do want you to take a guess. Why do you think you're self-sabotaging? Why do you think this happens to you? And just create just a little bit of a guess in your head. All right, today I'm going to talk about 4 reasons why. Those aren't the only 4 reasons, but they're 4 extremely popular reasons with my clients. Number 1, we don't trust our own abilities. And sometimes some of you are thinking, why would I trust my own abilities? I have ADHD and I get confused all the time, especially I forget about pizza boxes. Why should I even try for anything else? I don't even feel like I'm capable of other things. I'm wondering how many of you feel like you can't trust your own abilities. I am not going to lie. There have been several times in my life. One of them was when I was starting the ADHD Center. I said to a friend, you know what? I feel like I need parental guidance right now. And what I was talking about is more parental supervision. I feel like I should be supervised. I don't feel grown up enough to make all these decisions. I'm an English major. What is a business? I'm not a business major. And so I felt really overwhelmed. Like, who am I to try to do this? Reason 2 is fear of failure, or there's some of you out there who actually fear success. So fear of failure kept coming up again and again when I was writing my manuscript. When I wrote Your Brain's Not Broken, I had no expectations. I just wrote the book to an imaginary client I'd never meet and said, hey, your brain's not broken. Godspeed in the world, my friend. And so I had no fear of failure. Now with the second book, I had a fear of failure that kept popping up. And it kept popping up going, well, what if this book doesn't do well? What if this isn't going to work? And so the reason I kept self-sabotaging partly was I feared failure. I do have a client who actually fears success, which it sounds really weird, but I see this with a lot of my high IQ, high functioning, really kind of the go-getters. They look at, what if I succeed? Then people are going to look at me and they're going to figure out I'm an imposter. Yep, that's called imposter syndrome. Again, I'm hoping you as a listener or viewer, you're already kind of thinking through these. Is it 1? Is it 2? Now I'm going to give you number 3. Number 3 is a lack of self-awareness. It means we're not even aware of the negative thought patterns and behaviors that are hindering our success. So let me go back to this example with the woman who was having an interview. So she comes in for her session and she sits down and she looks utterly defeated. And she's like, well, I have an interview. I said, oh, do you want this job? Oh, yeah, I want it really badly, actually. It's kind of my ideal job. Oh, now notice what she was saying wasn't really matching up with what she was thinking. And I said, so anytime I see that, I try to get at, I'm wondering what she's not aware of. Come to find out, she was fired from her last position. And she was fired from her last position because she came in 5 to 7 minutes late more than 3 times. I'm going to say that again. She came in late more than 3 times, probably 4 or 5 over, I think, a year. More than 5 to 7 minutes late. Now, is that possibly related to her ADHD? Yeah, probably. Now, she was working in a very unforgiving kind of environment. And by the way, this isn't like a high-tech lab where timeliness has to be exactly observed. They could have given her a little bit more discretion, but no, she got fired from that. And so what was happening is below the surface, she was starting to simmer. And without realizing it, she was starting to create a story based on a lot of negative emotions. Whoops. Reason 4. Sometimes we use this as a coping mechanism, which means we'll self-sabotage because it's like we can't handle the pressure. And so what I want you to think of is, like a pressure cooker. Like the pressure's building, and you're like, I can't take it. I just need a whole day off. And one of my clients just did this. I can't take the stress. Stayed in bed, slept until like 4 or 5-ish by just staying in bed, sleeping on and off, not doing her job. And so she just self-sabotaged a whole day because she couldn't take the anxiety. Some of us might feel inadequate. And so because we're having this feeling of inadequacy, we're like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to lie, a younger version of Tamara, let's say in her 20s or so, didn't understand self-sabotaging and also didn't understand how sensitive she was to eating processed food and dairy, all that stuff. And so on the way home, I would stop and buy a bag of potato chips. And even just thinking of them, so good. But guess what happened? I felt so bad. And the next day I had a stomach ache. I'm not saying I ate the whole bag. Please don't go there. Okay, but maybe I did. But the whole point is I was self-sabotaging. I wasn't doing things to make my body feel better. I was actually doing things to make my body perform worse. But potato chips were a coping mechanism for me. All right, so now that you've seen those 4 reasons, which one do you connect with? Now, if you just said, okay, here's the reason, or I think it's a combination of 3 or 4, that's great. You can do that. That's allowed. If you're one of the ones that says, I don't connect with any of these, okay, your job's going to be a little bit harder, and you might even need a professional to help you kind of tease all this out. Okay, so just stay with me and keep listening, and we'll work together to figure this out. So the big reason we really self-sabotage is we want to protect ourselves. Or psychologically, would say we want to protect our ego. And what that means is inside everyone, there's this protective nature, and we just want to feel safe. We want to feel safe. We want to feel loved. We want to have fun. We want all these basic needs. And when those basic needs are shaken a little bit, we'll work to protect ourselves. And sometimes when we protect ourselves, it actually backfires into a self-sabotage. All right, so here's our goal. Our goal is to approach challenges with a sense that we can overcome the problem and even grow as a result. Now, I'm not talking about toxic positivity here. I'm not saying, yeah, we feel great about everything. No, life is hard. And sometimes some of you guys, life is kicking your tails. And I get that. And I respect that. So this isn't you can do anything when you're in tough times. I want you to know, sometimes life feels hard. But I want you to start to shift your mindset to, okay, this is a challenge. And if I have the mindset, I can overcome this problem. And I can even grow from it. That is our ultimate goal. I want to just pause here and really say this is a mindset that we want to acquire each day. Here's the problem. If we just stop there, that's not going to help you resolve any self-sabotage. So it's kind of like we have to go through, clean the house, and then we can assume this mindset. Okay? Because if those ghosts are in our house going, ooh, you're an idiot, and we self-sabotage. Did you like my impression of a ghost? I wish I hadn't done that. Anyway, if we don't clean out and get that ghost out, we're still going to be self-sabotaging, just with a positive mindset. And so when I say, here's our goal, this is our true goal, but we've got to do some house cleaning first. And so now we get to, how do you do this? There's 4 steps that I want to walk you through today. The first step is recognize your own self-sabotaging reasons. We just walked through 4. Don't worry, we're going to revisit those again. 2, understand the emotions that lead to the behavior. 3, ask yourself, what's the story behind these emotions in your self-sabotage? 4, develop self-supporting behaviors. All right, let's dig into the first one. Let's go back through those 4 reasons again. I've reworded these reasons so that you can start to kind of circle one of your answers. So what is your reason? A, I don't trust my own ability. B, I fear success or failure. C, I am unaware how negative I am to myself. D, I'm overwhelmed or have big feelings, so I'm avoiding doing anything. E, other. Do you have, fill in your own blank here. Now let's go through those 3 examples. First of all, pizza box. Okay. Pizza box guy, remember pizza box? He and his wife, they had pizza and he's like, oh, clean up. And he threw away the pizza and put the empty pizza box into the refrigerator. So in processing this with him, what's starting to happen is I am unaware of how negative I am to myself. And he's starting to create a story about that. And he also can answer, A, I don't trust my own ability. If I can't put a pizza box, the right pizza box in the refrigerator, how can I show up at work? What do people are supposed to report to me? That's not real. And so he has 2 reasons there that we can kind of sort out. Okay, so the woman who came into my office, deflated, she also, she was unaware how negative she was to herself. Remember that? She said, in fact, she said to me, I was late so much. They should have fired me. They should have. And so she was really unaware of the shame because she was like, of course I should be shamed. What idiot gets fired for being 5 to 7 minutes late? Right? She also had she was overwhelmed by her big feelings. Okay. And her big feelings were actually causing her to go into the next step. Right. And so her big feelings were like shutting her down. And for me, writing the manuscript this summer, I had A, I don't trust my own ability. I'm like, who am I to write a book? That's embarrassing, calling myself an author. They're going to read the book and figure out real fast I'm not, right? Fearing failure. Yep. I'm going to write the second book. And guess what? People are going to read and go, wow, that stunk, right? You hear the reasons that are starting to pile up. When reasons start to pile up, they get even, your risk of self-sabotaging becomes even higher, right? I'm also aware, I didn't realize, well, I keep forgetting how negative I can be in my own head. Not to other people. I'm usually pretty positive, motivating to other people, like, you can do this. Inside my head, there's a really old lady wearing glasses, hunched over, and she can't do it. I've seen it. And then all the voices of, yeah, you know what? She's going to fail here. And so each time I picked up the manuscript, I would look and go, those 3 things kept popping up in my head. Okay, when those reasons popping up, self-sabotage is about to happen. So the next step is you have to ask yourself, what are the big emotions behind your reason? Now, for those of you watching, I put a few on the screen. For those of you who are listening, go ahead and look up an emotion wheel, a list of emotions, because sometimes we can't point to it. We can't think what it is. And so literally looking at a list of emotions helps us to kind of go tick, 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 tick. Oh, it's this one, right? Sometimes my clients will literally circle 4 or 5, which is absolutely okay. Emotions are incredibly complicated. And so let's go through our examples. The woman who was interviewing, she felt depressed. She did talk about how she was feeling resentful for being in an environment that wouldn't see that she was really good at her job, but fired her over this offense, right? She was feeling incapable. She actually was able to kind of tell me how she was feeling disillusioned because she lost hope. She lost hope that she would have a normal grown-up job because of this last experience. And then finally, Pizza Box Man. So Pizza Box Man was so angry. Who was he angry at? Himself. So all of these emotions are starting to kind of create a little bit of a story here. For me, when I was writing the manuscript, now, by the way, it's an honor that my publisher came to me and said, hey, we're interested in a second book. And that's such an honor. But instead of feeling the honor and the gratitude, going, this can be a wonderful experience, I felt miserable. There's an old saying among a lot of writers, I hate writing, but love having written. And that's because every time I write, I have to kind of face myself and go, is this true? Can I stand behind this? And am I being vulnerable in my writing? Because that's something I really try to do. Oh, and guess what? I don't like to be vulnerable. I love Brene Brown. She's my girl. But you know what? When you're faced with being vulnerable to people you don't know, that seems a whole bunch of hooey. And so I was really fighting with, I don't like this feeling. I don't like feeling vulnerable. The other thing is I was uncertain. I turned in an outline to my publisher. And then in true ADHD fashion, I never looked at it again because I wrote a different outline eventually. And so I was feeling very uncertain. I was moving chapters around. And so there were all these big negative emotions that were kind of backing up the reasons to self-sabotage. So the next step is to figure out what's the story behind my emotions. Why am I thinking this? And so our brains, we really want answers. And we don't even want, it doesn't even matter what the answer is, but our brain is constantly trying to fill in the blanks. Let's fill in this blank. And so when, I have a reason for self-sabotaging, when I can back it up with emotions, my brain wants to fill in, oh, you're feeling this way because, you're feeling this way because I blame my ADHD for my mistake. You are feeling this way because I'm a loser. I'm feeling this way because this is why I can't have nice things. I'm feeling this way because I'm stupid. I'm feeling this way because I know I can't do it perfectly. And that is stopping me. I'm feeling this way because now I'm regretting this decision. And I'm positive you can fill in the blank on your own here. What's the story behind your emotions? Okay, now remember, this takes time. And if you can't do this in this short webinar, that's fine. But take these steps and try to dissect what's behind your self-sabotage. Okay, so good news. There's a next step, though. The next step is I'm going to ask you to choose a path. So you have 4 choices. You can A, reframe your negative emotional experience in a more positive light. B, accept your negative emotions, but stop self-sabotaging. C, notice my negative emotions and consider more positive ones. D, do nothing because self-sabotaging feels so good. Now, if you answered D, that is the wrong answer. And yet some of my clients do respond like, you know what? I'm going to self-sabotage because I don't know anything else to do. Doing other things seems to take a lot of effort. So I'd rather just sit and punish myself. And I'm asking you today, begging you today, if that's you, I know D sounds a little like I'm being sarcastic, and I am. Those of you who know me, I'm quite sarcastic. But in all seriousness, if you don't feel like you can do anything, please see an ADHD certified coach, or if it's big enough to work with a therapist, or another mental health professional, please find an informed ADHD mental health professional. So let's go back to the top three. So the first choice is reframe my negative emotion experience in a more positive light. So working back with a woman who was interviewing, she came in deflated, like, I'm probably going to stink up this interview. I'm not going to be able to do well. And why should they even hire me? Because I'm a lousy human, right? She went big in her self-sabotage. And so by the end of the session, and by the way, every time I kept asking her, why do you want this job? Why would you be good at it? She couldn't help but smile, because deep down in there was this glimmer of hope that she would be good at that job. In fact, she loved this job and she was made for this job. But see, her self-sabotaging didn't want to allow her to believe it. So I noticed, I said, every time I ask you why you're good at this, you smile. What's that about? And so I started to tap in and help her connect with her positive feelings about this. She went through, she texted me later, she went through the interview, and the interview went well. Now she started self-sabotaging again, going, well, probably they still won't hire me. And then, I said, stop filling in information. You're self-sabotaging again, right? Because self-sabotaging is habitual. It is almost kind of self-comforting, right? So I kept trying to, well, what if you don't get this job? Is there still positive here? And so she was reframing her negative emotions and experiences in a more positive light. Choice B is accept your negative emotions, but stop self-sabotaging. Remember I said, I hate writing, but I love having written. Well, I just accepted writing's hard, and it's really hard. And yet that doesn't mean I have to stop, or it doesn't mean I'm going to keep self-sabotaging. What it means is I'm going to accept, yeah, this is hard. I don't like being vulnerable. I feel kind of uncertain about things. I really don't like uncertainty, but guess what? I'm going to keep doing it. And so that's how I chose to respond to my self-sabotaging. Like, yeah, I have these negative emotions. So what? We're going to move on. Not every circumstance I could do that, but in this one, I could keep doing it. And by the way, remember I signed a contract, so there was that responsibility also kind of pushing me out of my self-sabotage. Finally, C, notice my negative emotions and consider my positive ones. This client who texted me about the pizza box incident, he was only focusing on the negative emotions, right? I feel so stupid. I'm angry. I'm just disgusted that I can't get anything right. And I really asked him to consider more positive ones. Yeah, you're right. You guys lost pretty much what equals a pizza. But guess what? It's a pizza. We're not talking about tens and thousands of dollars. Maybe we can actually find the sense of humor in that. And by the way, if you're ADHD and you can't find sense of humor, just start doing it. I don't care what you have to do to try to find things funny, but this is a great coping mechanism out of self-sabotage. One time, my husband and I, we were doing something in the garage, and something kind of splattered everywhere. And I think it was paint or something, and it was just a huge mess. And immediately we both, who have ADHD, just conjured up all these negative emotions. And, we just wanted to self-sabotage, and think all these negative thoughts. And my husband just said, well, guess we can't cry over spilled paint. And it kind of broke the spell of my self-sabotage. And I started laughing. And now this was about 15 years ago. We still laugh like, okay, we can't cry over spilled paint. Let's move on. And so we turned that negative emotion. By the way, that splatter is still on our garage floor. But you know what? we turned it into this kind of funny moment going, oh, can't cry over spilled paint. So you can notice the negative emotions and try to find the positive ones. By the way, I work with a lot of clients who are unwilling to do that. And if you're unwilling to do that, that's another reason to see a certified ADHD coach or an ADHD informed mental health provider. So lastly, you want to develop some self-supporting behaviors. One of my clients a few weeks ago said, okay, so you're saying I can't do this. I'm like, well, no, I'm saying that's not a best option. And the person's like, what else could I do? And that question tells me literally they had no understanding of another way besides self-sabotage. So here are some things that I think of, but there's so many more. And these are just some quick things. First of all, I'm a big believer in the 5 basic needs: survival, power, love, fun, freedom. And whenever I'm self-sabotaging, and I go through those steps, try to identify everything, and want to find a self-supporting behavior, I ask myself, am I meeting my needs? Because a lot of times self-supporting or self-sabotaging behavior comes from not meeting our basic needs. And by the way, folks, I consider sleep and eating in survival. This is our basic, and drinking enough water. A lot of my clients don't drink enough water. So what we want to do is, how can we start to support ourselves? So look, and ask yourself, am I giving myself enough rest, water, the correct food? Power has to do with, do I feel out of control in this project? What if I'm self-sabotaging because I've lost control over this? How can I feel like I have some autonomy again? Love. Sometimes we self-sabotage out of the sense of trading love. Now, a lot of my clients, when their need for fun is not being met, that's when I see a lot of avoiding behaviors happening. And so we really want to make sure that basic need is met, okay? And not met for 12 hours when you have a big project due, but it's met at least for an hour so that you can get back to work, or at least 10 minutes, whatever it can be, just to have a little bit of fun. And finally, freedom. I don't know about a lot of you guys listening, but many of my clients have a need for freedom. So much that they can actually look oppositional at times. In other words, they don't like being told what to do. Okay, so I'm in that category too. I really don't like to be told what to do. Like I'm going through a drive-through, and the really nice person who just took my order says, thank you, it's going to be blah, blah, blah dollars. Please pull through. And I say, no, you pull through, right? I just instinctively have that need for kind of this sense of freedom. And so a lot of times I start self-sabotaging when I feel resentful that I don't want to do something, right? So I'm like, how can I get a sense of freedom back in this project? How can I get a sense of wanting to do this on my own again? I know it's being required from work, but how do I put my sense of choice? By the way, power and freedom for ADHD people tends to get conflated. And that's okay if those two needs conflate. Next example of self-supporting behaviors. And my clients think this is a weird technique, but it actually works. Add a new character in your head. Okay, so if you're ADHD, you have a lot of little voices. Sometimes they're negative voices, sometimes they're positive voices. I write about this in my new book, but add a new character. And so add this positive character that like, it can be from literature, it could be from a movie, it could be someone from your life that will go, all right, guys, calm down. She's fine. She's going to be okay. We're going to go to this job interview and we're going to do well. Okay. I need a little less from all of you. And start to have that character in your head. With Mr. Pizza Box, if he had a new character, it could be, hey, you know what, guys? It's a pizza box. This is what we're talking about here. It's a pizza box. And when you actually define the character, it's an exercise I do with my clients. Like, if you were to have this character in your head, who would be the character? Why this character? What will this character do to help you stop self-sabotaging? Lastly, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and EMDR are highly effective for those who are repeatedly self-sabotaging. So before we go to questions, I just want to close with kind of a personal example. My daughter was in grad school in St. Louis, and she came home for dinner. We were so happy. We're sitting around, and in true ADHD style, the dinner was loud. We're joking. We're playing around. And somehow, we got on the topic of, what do you do when you fail? And a lot of us were like, that's easy. I go and buy some sushi because that's what makes me happy. And then quietly, my daughter, who was then in grad school, said, I sit in the dark with the lights off, and I tell myself, I don't deserve even the electricity right now. And you can imagine that shut down the table. And all her sisters and me, we were just reaching toward her going, oh, honey, that's horrible. That's horrible. And I'm landing here because I want you to understand self-punishing behavior like that is self-sabotage. And so even though I want you to, look at the reasons, if it is that bad, if you're punishing yourself, you cannot keep doing this. Please get help. It was after that experience, we got her diagnosed for ADHD. We got her some different kind of help. And she finished grad school and is doing incredibly well in life and doesn't self-sabotage like that. She may do it in other ways, but not that negative. And so I want to be very clear to everyone, the degree and the intensity of your self-sabotaging. If you're self-sabotaging on a very serious level, please don't try to go it alone. Please get help. If you're telling yourself, I don't even deserve the electricity, that's when you need outside help. All right. Thanks for listening. I'll take any questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Rosier, for that authentic and informative presentation, and for helping us to see the humor in our foibles and our vulnerabilities. Before we start the Q&A, I'd like to thank Inflow once more for sponsoring this webinar. Now to your questions. Someone writes, why have I been frozen and self-medicating for years? I've lost so much, I'm aware of it, and yet I'm unable to change. Can you help me move forward?
Yeah. That falls in that last category that I just mentioned. Please don't try to do this alone. There's layers of things. I would suggest finding an ADHD-informed therapist, not because you're broken, right? I wrote the book, Your Brain's Not Broken. I promise you it's not. You're not broken, but please get help for that. It is a horrible feeling. I've had to go to counseling before in my life because I was just so stuck. Self-loathing was kind of this horrible habit that I acquired from childhood. And it sounds like self-loathing could be at the core of it. So I just want to encourage you, find someone and start to kind of like yourself again. I know it seems far off, but you can do it.
Someone writes, how can partners of people who self-sabotage intervene in a trauma-informed and helpful way?
Great question. Okay. my answer is going to be twofold. First of all, you need to be responsible for your own self-sabotaging. Okay. No one else can get you out of it. However, loved ones can help you identify it. And so you see the difference. So we don't want someone to try to fix it for us. Okay. Because our heads are going to do weird things with that. And it's our responsibility to fix. But if a loved one can go, hey, I know you shared this, that you have a problem with self-loathing. I think you're doing it right now. And sometimes, because I'm trying to protect myself, I might go, yeah, no, I'm not. And kind of informed your loved one, like, when I'm in this self-protective state, I'm going to try to respond nicely, but thank you for reminding me. When I was first married, my husband would say, oh, honey, you need to get a ladder and climb down off yourself. That you were being way too hard on yourself. And he'd kind of say it as a light joke. And when he first said it a couple times, I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about, because I was so familiar with that self-loathing voice, right? Which self-sabotaged me. But then after a while, that began to be a clue for me. Wait a minute. What if I don't have to hate myself to get things done? What if I'm allowed to make mistakes just because I'm a human, right? So, loved ones, if you see people that you love dearly self-sabotaging, after dinner, that dinner with my daughter, who said she sat in the dark to punish herself, I took her aside silently, or, aside from her sisters, aside from the loudness, and said, I love you, and we need to find a way, because this isn't okay. And so I had to step in and kind of alert her to, you think this is okay? It's not okay. You're harming yourself when you do this.
That's really interesting, because it's a different way of seeing self-harm. We usually think of it as like more physical, but that's really, really interesting. Someone asked, can time blindness be part of self-sabotage?
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Whoever wrote that question, thank you for asking that. I was trying to figure out how to fit this in, but it didn't kind of fit with the flow. So here's the thing. Time blindness, and by the way, I have time blindness. Okay. I kept forgetting to watch the timer. Like, am I on time? And am I doing things? Time blindness is a true disability. So I don't think self-sabotage is time blindness, or time blindness is self-sabotage, except when, in the case of the interviewee, she had already been written up twice. And instead of setting a timer going, I'm making an agreement with myself that I will leave and get there what I believe to be absurdly early, so this never happens again, she kind of felt resentful at the write-up. And so she kept kind of acting out against it. And so in this case, time blindness caused the write-ups, but her response to this thing that we have, this symptom that we have, was actually self-sabotage. So let me give another example. The person who doesn't wake up in the morning, mornings are hard for those of us with ADHD, right? The self-sabotaging, or the ADHD part is, I don't do well in mornings. I don't like to get out of bed. Nice warm inside bed, cold world. I want to stay in bed. Duh. But hitting the snooze, that's the self-sabotaging. Okay, so I don't want to confuse symptoms with decisions. And so thank you for asking that question. I hope that clarified it.
The question before, you talked about the spouse who asked how he can come to the aid of his partner. Now we have a question that is, what if your spouse or parent or manager at work reinforces your negative thoughts about yourself? How do you protect yourself and your confidence in those situations?
Yeah. You know what? I'm grateful for the experiences I've gone through, because they've given me insights. But let me tell you, I had a supervisor who I went to my dean to talk about her. I was in higher ed, and the dean just said, she doesn't like you. And not only did she not like me, she hated everything about me. And I want you to learn from my mistake here. I let her voice get into my head. I let her voice get into my head for years. Long after I left that job, she was in there. She's one of the ghosts that kept self-sabotaging, kept saying, no, that's not right. That's not right. You're a failure. And she did a lot of damage. So here's a couple of choices. One, get out of the environment if it's not healthy enough for you. Find another job. Now, don't leave your job until you get another, right? But find another. Get help. That voice in your head, that voice should not be taking up space without paying a lot of rent. And by the way, I wasn't even aware how much her voice was in my head until I started doing my own work. She did a lot of damage in there. So I want you to know I feel for you in this predicament. I really think I wish I would have gotten out faster. The last thing is every day, refocus yourself. I'm a big fan of EFT. That's tapping to reinforce a better confidence, a sense of wholeness and peace. You can do yin yoga if that calms and centers you. Whatever you need to do to find your center and not be knocked off of it, and you might have to do it during your lunch break and everything. Try to recenter yourself constantly.
Someone says, what if I succeed and then people expect more from me and I can't do it?
And congratulations, you have the fear of success. And that is a great, and so great that you asked that question, because now you've identified, I have a fear of success. What if I do this and people are going to keep, it was so hard to do the first time, and now people are going to keep asking me to replicate this? That just sounds exhausting. How about I not? So do work on, am I using avoidance? Work on the emotions behind it. What's the story you're telling yourself? And for you specifically, start to take apart that story. Is this actually true? What if this isn't even, what if people are proud of me? And what if they're not mean expectations, but hopeful ones? People are like, great, you did it. Let's continue to grow. Remember, our goal is to meet challenges with a sense of determination and a belief that we can grow.
Someone asked, what about RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria? I just learned to not even think of relationships because of the pain it could potentially cause. How do you get out of that mindset?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. That's a hard one, isn't it? In other words, you believe if I just build a brick wall around myself, I'm going to be safe. I'm not going to be hurt. You know, it's incredible. I was working with a family, and they love each other so much, but sometimes they get sideways with each other and they get angry. They say nasty things to each other. And I was working with the daughter, and I said, you know, loving is such a privilege, and it's such an honor to be loved and to love. But you know what the problem is? We're going to get hurt, and you're going to get hurt if you love. I'm a parent. Being a parent is the scariest thing I've ever done, because now I have this little infant, and I'm just like, what am I going to do? I'm sure I'm going to screw this all up. I can't keep this tiny infant safe. So I want you to really think about love is a risk. Love is scary. And I think you might want to work with a professional to kind of dig up, what are my emotions around this? And why am I self-sabotaging myself in this very specific way? Hey, and best of luck. Because you know what? Love is the best thing humans do.
Someone writes, I've gotten fired from so many jobs. How can I recognize the behaviors that take me down before they become a problem?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's just sounds lousy. And you know what? I'm wondering if you're even self-sabotaging yourself or too many use of self. I'll try this again. I'm wondering if you're self-sabotaging even before you get to the next job. So in this case, you really have to work through some beliefs and some stories you have. And I know I keep repeating this, but you guys are asking these incredibly rich questions. But this one needs to, an ADHD coach would be excellent at helping you do this. And make sure you find a certified coach that is an ADHD coach so that they understand that you have big emotions propping up your self-sabotage. I'm really sorry for your experience. And I want you to know there's a lot of hope for you and you can do this. Please don't try this one alone. Please do try to work with someone as you do this.
Also on the work front, but a different aspect, she says, it feels like my perfectionism and people pleasing are what makes me a good employee and even a good friend. But I also know that I then avoid other tasks or responsibilities, which makes other people frustrated with me. How can I learn to set boundaries and be true to myself?
You know what? Thank you for this question. Well, you guys, this is a smart audience, aren't they, Carol? Because they're asking these deep questions. This is something I really wanted to include in the presentation. So perfectionism and people pleasing. There are two ways that we self-sabotage. Yeah. And here's the thing. A lot of us, we get through life being easygoing, nice to work with, because we know we're going to screw up. So if we're nice enough, people will kind of give us a break, right? A lot of you guys have that coping mechanism. Then we add a nice dose. I see a lot of high-performing females, especially doing this, of perfectionism. And so now behind perfectionism, though, is kind of a self-loathing belief, like get it perfect or else. And I usually add a swear word to that when I'm talking to myself, right? Because remember, I'm still working on this. And by the way, I'll probably always be working on this. So every day, what I would recommend when you go into the office, write down your priorities. Okay, these things have to get done today. And then use that as your dashboard all day. So if someone comes into your office and says, hey, this just happened. And sometimes you might have an ADHD boss, right? Who forgot to do something and creates a fire drill, right? Look at your list that you thought was your priority and go, okay, super, thank you. I want to help you. Which one of these things do you want me to replace right now? And if that's, and remember, I'm talking with your supervisor, right? If it's with a colleague and it says, oh, you know what? I really need help with this. You can say, great, I can put it on tomorrow's list. I can't do it today because I've already planned up today. Start to get the boundaries. Sometimes we don't have boundaries because we're not clear what we want to do. And our ADHD is like, well, that's a nice shiny thing the supervisor just asked. And wow, I'm going to get all this nice dopamine if I do it for her. So I'm going to do it. But every day, if you set your priorities, very specifically set your priorities, right? You keep using that as your dashboard.
Okay. This is about overspending. My self-defeating behavior involves overspending. It feels like self-compassion to buy things, but then I go into debt. How can I feel that I'm taking care of myself without spending money and getting into trouble?
Yeah. So this is really hard because it does feel like self-care. Like, you know what? It's a form of treat yourself. You've been a big girl all day and gosh, life feels hard. Let's treat ourselves. So one obvious answer, and I don't want to make it sound too simple, is how can you treat yourself without having money included in this? And so, sometimes I treat myself by one of my clients takes a bath. She has a big old bathtub, right? She's like, oh, I sit under, she has one of those skylight. She goes, I sit under that and I just fully relax. I light candles. She gets into the whole thing. So that's a way for her to treat herself. Try to find ways of treating yourself. And here's the key. Write down those ways. Write those ways down so that when you're feeling like, I really feel like I need a treat, instead of going to Amazon, look at your list and go, you know what? It would be a great treat if I actually did this. You know, it would be a great treat if I did this. And so start to make your list of how you can treat yourself. Now, about the spending, though, I would love for you to challenge you to try to make it harder to spend. So here's what businesses do, and it's quite smart. They do it. They send us emails, and then we go to their website, and guess what? Our card is already in our computer. It's already on their website. Amazon, your card. Something I recommend with my clients who don't like this is disconnect your cards. When you disconnect your cards, it's an extra step, and you're like, I don't know if I want to get off my couch to do it. That just makes it a little bit harder. There's all kinds of things you can do, but really getting at the belief first of life is hard, I deserve to treat myself. That's the key there for you first to kind of dig through.
Okay, well, unfortunately, that has to be our last question because we're out of time. But Dr. Rosier, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise with our ADHD community. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Carol. It's been great to be here.
And thank you to today's listeners. If you would like to access the event resources, visit attitudemag.com and search podcast 492. The slides and recording are posted a few hours after each live webinar. If you're listening in replay mode, simply click on the episode description. And please know that our full library of Attitude webinars is available as a podcast. It's called the ADHD Experts Podcast, and it's available on all streaming platforms. Make sure you don't miss future Attitude webinars, articles, or research updates by signing up to receive our email newsletters at attitudemag.com/newsletters. Thank you, everyone.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.